ugly thing about national unity that's not national or unifying. It's a forced paralysis where everyone is forced to sit together and just watch the ship collapse.
And veto each other.
And I think a Lebanon that we can both reimagine without regional battles, and you said the battlefield, or the playground for war. The country has been a battlefield and a playground for decades. I'd like to live in a Lebanon that's not like that.
I totally agree.
One that doesn't care if there's a conflict in Iran and Saudi Arabia, or for that matter, every single issue that happens in the neighborhood, Lebanon has to be involved. I'd rather live in a Lebanon.
I hope that people, and it's a personal struggle. It's not something that I can just call on people. I'm calling upon myself also to just remain a believer that we have the power to affect, not to change everything the way we dream to, because that would put us on a spot that would make anything less than our expectation unacceptable. No, but we can influence. I see democracy not as it is written in our school books. Democracy isn't the people governing themselves. No, that's a romantic story. Democracy, in fact, is in opposition of a autocracy where one center influences and rules government. It's one center. It's the ruler and his family or whatever.
Yeah.
In democracy, you have several centers of influence. You have the actual ruler, the prime minister, let's say, or the president of the republic. You have the financial elite. You have the human rights and NGOs groups. And you have many other factions. What's missing in Lebanon is the popular center that will never rule on its own the country, neglecting all other centers of influence. But it will influence power. Now, people are not influencing power to a degree where, after a year and a half of our biggest collapse in the history of our republic, the same players that made this whole collapse possible in this dramatic way are taking their time, 8 months, to form a government on the same reasons of paralysis before that they forced before the collapse. That's how inefficient the population is as a center of influence. I would like to reclaim that center.
Absolutely. And I think, although I don't want to end it on a disagreement necessarily, but I'll suggest it. I think all of this are the blurred consequences of war. And something we didn't talk about. It's maybe unrelated to what we discussed, but there's no reason why Lebanon should have 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate in its port.
Definitely.
No reason. And only one obvious conclusion can be brought about is that Lebanon is still the battlefield. That's the problem. Yeah. A city that was scarred, and I said this in different outlets, it's a city that was assassinated. There's neighborhoods of Beirut that are unrecognizable. Yeah. That's because of war. It's not corruption is what lets ammonium nitrate stick around longer than it should. Mismanagement and bad supervision is what keeps it stored in a very toxic way. But it's not the reason why it's there. And that's part of war. And I'd love to live in a Lebanon.
The problem here is that I always go one step back maybe. And the reason of war is the absence of the state that should eliminate the possibility of war.
So we're actually agreeing on that issue.
I do believe that.
Yeah.
And maybe just to wrap up, I would like to I'll be your guest next time to just.
Well, I can do you the honor of putting it on Zoom so you don't have to commute.
Yeah, definitely.
So you can do it from here.
Yeah, like I did to you and making you come to Junior, because it's a whole other issue on definition of the state and how the state can reinvigorate itself and its functions. To be able to organize a society in a whole different way than the way that we got used to for the last, at least I say 45 years, 50 years.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Ronnie. I really enjoyed this talk, and hopefully we can always have people where we have our disagreements, but at least try to think with the same intention, which is the common good. I don't believe anyone of us here has a hidden agenda. We're trying to be as clear as possible. The conversation that lead nowhere are those where the one of both interlocutors have hidden agenda that they won't try to share the idea and try to reach any solution. So I thank you so much for your presence here.
It's an honor, Jad, and I'll add one thing. I'm a big fan of independent media. And during the protests, I think a lot of us ended up looking at independent voices. Some of it's obvious names like Megaphone, Daraj Media. They're now household names. But there are individuals that emerged as well as independent voices, and you're among them. So I really commend anyone trying to push through in the independent media terrain and succeeding. And you've done really good work, and I'll say it.
Thank you so much.
Your documentary of Ziad Rahbani, it proves that you can disagree with a man's politics and still fall in love with his music. Your appreciation for him showed in the documentary. And I think, if anything, it proves that you're a talented storyteller because you brought somebody who I don't know that well. You brought him into my world for over an hour and a half. I think it's 1 hour.
1 hour 50, yeah.
1 hour and 50 minutes. But it went by quickly, and it reminded me a lot about him and why it's okay to disagree with his politics and love his music.
Yeah, I truly appreciate it coming from you as a storyteller that I truly admire.
And I like the subtitles too.
There's Mark Hayek, I should comment on that.
A good translator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jad.